This is Andy.
And this is Matt.
And you're listening to
The Hop Podcast with no name.
What a dumb name.
It's so stupid. Okay, episode 76. There was
Wait,
no.
did you already hit the button?
This is. It started. we've been on the call for I think 60 seconds, and I just started to record.
Oh gosh, we're in it now.
We're in it.
Okay.
And this is.
This is definitely the end of complexity.
Allegedly, it's the end of complexity, and there's some operational learning to be done.
There is. Yeah, so we didn't give any homework last time, but we did try to demonstrate two. Well, we tried to demonstrate all three, but we only got to 2 out of 3 different just general models of learning. The first is if we're picturing things as an ordered system, which if we have an event, we picture it as like a piece of machinery that's breaking or has broken, and we're trying to find the thing that failed with the hopes that we can fix it so that we make the machinery work again. That's kind of the mental picture that we have of an ordered system. So we demonstrated that. And then we broadened our view a little bit to more of a process view, but the questions that you asked me were specific to elements of failure. So things like what's most frustrating or what doesn't work well, right? Places where I'd either point to something being difficult to execute or like highly variable or some sort of barrier that makes it hard for me to get the task done. And we talked through what that might sound like and trying to come up with proposed solutions for those areas that were difficult. And now we're going to model a completely different way of trying to learn about a process in which we're actually not trying to pinpoint things that are bad about it. We're just trying to get the same mental picture of what it is. And why this becomes so important and why it helps support the recognition that we're in a complex adaptive system is that part of what happens in a complex adaptive system is that the end user, which in this case would be me, I become so normalized to my process, I actually would have a hard time pointing out all of the places where I have to adapt or work really hard to create success. Because for me, it's just normal. This is just what it means to, in this example, get out of my house in the morning. That's the example that we're using. It's just normal to me. And so if you ask me to pinpoint places where it doesn't work well or explain why I might be late to work, I'm going to struggle in comparison to just being able to describe what it's actually like to do the process. Because things that might be really brittle, things that might be really close to failure, I'm not going to picture that way because I've created success so many times that it's going to be hard for me to acknowledge by just scanning through my memory of the places that are most brittle or most prone to failure. I might come up with a couple of them, maybe the most recent, but it would be hard to capture a bunch of them unless I have to talk through it. And once I talk through it, we can get on the same page as to what's difficult and what's not.
Yes. Everything you just said. I mean, we both separately listened to the episode last time, and it's it, right? We did the ordered system, sort of just what happened, what are you gonna do about it? We sort of broadened it up, and we talked about maybe a lead line, which something you can attach your dog to that they can go outside by themselves, and heating up the garage, both of which I suggested, and both of which are great ideas.
The best ideas ever.
Maybe we do that, and now we're gonna do some actual operational learning.
Right. And to be clear, I have no idea what I'm going to say, right? I haven't tried to pre-think this. I don't have any script. I have no idea how I'm going to describe my morning, because in the reality of asking people to teach what it's like to execute work, we don't want people to feel like they have to have a script. We're just looking for them to try to teach us as much as they can about the reality of what it's like to get something done.
Which I think is the same for me, right? I think we do a lot of operational learning training, which is training people how to do operational learning. And the number one question is either what are the list of questions I need to ask, or can you give me a playbook and how to do this? And of course,
That's the
there
number
are
one question of the
of
participants. I want
people
to
who are
know if we
learning,
can
right? They're like,
give them a
"What?"
cheat sheet. Like,
Yeah.
hey,
So
give me the questions to ask.
yeah, when I'm getting these 3 to 5 people together, how do I start the conversation and what do I ask them? What's my talk track?
Yeah.
And we don't give them that because it can't exist when you're operation learning and learning based on what someone's telling you. You can't pre-plan questions either.
Yeah. And if that concept is newer to you, we did do a mini series on operational learning where we describe what it means to do what Matt's about to do, to start a conversation and then to actually follow it instead of leading. Like, what does it mean to ask the next best question? And that's what we're going to try to demonstrate. But the reason we're demonstrating in this case is to hear the other side of the coin of what it's actually like to execute something and how much more information we can learn in a fairly short period of time if we don't try to over direct what people are thinking about, if they're just being able to describe the process.
Are you ready to go?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay.
So not ready at all.
So no. Okay. So this is always a fun part for me because I think the first question we get is, so how do I start this thing?
Yeah,
and
that's usually what people want to. How do I start a conversation?
How do I start operational
how do I start
learning?
it?
How do I start
Matt,
a
how do you
team?
start it? Demonstrate how you start a conversation about.
Let's do it. So actually, Andrea, I have taken your kids to school or sort of done this morning process, but it was a while ago. And I don't know what it's like to do it today. And honestly, I don't even know where to start. So if you were going to teach me about what it's like to get the kids up and out the door to school, where would you start?
Where would I start? Oh, I think I would start by saying it's very dependent upon if I'm doing it alone or not. That what I have to do, in the morning is not only dependent upon whether or not my husband is home, but also whether or not he was around or not around the day before. Because we have some prep lists of things that we do at night to make the morning easier. And depending upon who was home and what was happening at that time, those things may or may not have been done, which dramatically changes the morning process.
Okay, so to start, you give me this to even start telling me what it's like to get them up and out. It's dependent on a number of things that you're sort of doing the calculations on in your head, which is, are you alone or not when you're getting them ready? Which to even get to that point, you have to think about whether you were alone or not the day before.
Yeah.
Prepping.
Yeah. So let me try to describe why that's a problem, because if I wasn't there the day before, then chances are in the morning, I don't know where anything is because it doesn't necessarily wind up in the same places that I would put it in. And our kids are young enough that they don't necessarily put things in the same place. My husband is really good at teaching our kids how to take care of their own things. And I'm really good at continuously putting things exactly in the same place all the time, which leads to basically a morning of me having no idea where the jackets are, right? Jackets, if I was there the day before, they're hanging in the same place, because even if my kids don't execute hanging the jackets where they're supposed to be, I end up executing it. If I'm not the person who is home the night before, I don't know where the jackets are. And they could be anywhere from left in the car or in the garage or in a bag or at school, because they never made it home. And I don't know which one it is. And if my husband's home, it's really easy for me to ask, hey, do you know where the jackets are? And he can tell me. If he's not home, then it's like a game of, jacket hide and seek that I get to play in the morning. And that's just one of many pieces of a puzzle that have to be put together because it's snowy right now. Both of my children have to go to school with something called the Big Five, which is just a phrase that they give the kids to remember that they need 5 things. So they need hats, gloves, jacket, snow pants, and boots. So each of them need 5 things. Those things, obviously, we would like them not to be wet from the day before, and we would ideally like them all in the same place. That's not necessarily true depending upon how the day before went.
Okay.
So that's one thing that could be different.
Yeah. So the I guess what I'm hearing is that you're the value you and your husband sort of put on these objects is different, where you say like they need to be in the same place, consistency is key, want to know where to find them, and your husband is much more on they'll take care of their things, they need to know where they are, that's their responsibility, which I'm sure works well when you're together in the morning, but
It works very well
in
when
some
we're together.
cases,
Yes. It's like it's yin and yang, and it's really helpful because he'll make sure that they put things away, and I will know if it hasn't been completed, and I will say, "Hey, I don't know where the jackets are," and he will reiterate to the children, "You need to get the jackets in the right place." And so they execute the task of getting them in the right place. Sometimes that task doesn't get all the way to completion if we're not both there.
but so I want to go to the all the way to completion, but before that, you had mentioned these big five, and you said ideally they're not wet.
Yeah, ideally they're
what
not
is tell me about when it's not ideal. What happens? What's that like?
So not it is not always that both of the children go outside. So when we get home
at school?
At school,
Okay.
yeah. Sometimes they're just not allowed outside. No, at school. They might have to wear their big five, or they might not put snow pants on and they'll just put hats and gloves on. So if you picture all of it coming home in a big bag, you could put your hand in there and grab the snow pants and they're dry. And so your assumption would be, well, they didn't go outside today because it was too cold. And so you leave it at that. But if you did put your hand a little deeper in the bag and you grab the hat and glove, you would find out that they're soaking wet because they didn't put on their snow pants, but they did put on their hats and gloves, and then they used them, and they are soaking wet sitting at the bottom of a bag, which if you don't take them out and either lay them out to dry the night before, or you don't throw them in the dryer, then by the next morning, they still will be wet. I know this from experience. And then in the morning, you go to put their hats and gloves on to get to the bus stop, and their hats and gloves are soaking wet still from the day before.
Oh, I don't have
which
kids.
Generally doesn't go well.
I don't have kids myself, but I'm guessing wet hat and gloves not ideal. What happens in those times?
And it's usually a full-on rejection. Well, the youngest will reject wearing them entirely, which depending upon how cold it is not an option. And also she shouldn't be going out with soaking wet hat and gloves because it's not going to help anyway, which means that we then have to try to find the backup hat and gloves, or I have to figure out how to get the youngest to not have to go outside to the bus stop if it's too cold, or we have to use the car option that was outlined in the previous episode, because they're not going to wear a hat and gloves, but it's negative a lot wind chill outside. And if they didn't, there would be a problem, especially if the bus was late and we had to be standing outside for, an extended period of time. And that's just hats and gloves.
Yeah. And I'm also curious about this big bag of what is it just like a plastic bag? Like what are these all stored in?
It's like one of those reusable large shopping bags, like that you might get like a Home Goods or a TJ Maxx.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We've done this for I think 7 minutes already. I have, so just showing it to you, I've been taking notes the whole time. And I have 2 pages of notes, and we haven't
even got to whether lunches were prepped.
We actually, if you think about the nuggets that you dropped, you started by saying there are 4 distinct possibilities of how we even start the morning.
Yeah.
Either we were together the night before or we weren't, and either we are together in the morning or we're not.
Yeah.
And then went through one of them.
Correct.
Which was when...
No, the hardest one for me, because it's the least amount of information that I have, and I'm the person executing the task, right? So, so for me personally, it's the hardest one.
Yeah. And then we got into, we didn't even make it through all the parts that you spoke about the first time, like getting them up, getting them ready. This was just prep and a bag full of clothes.
Correct. we haven't even gotten the kids out of bed. Yeah. Yep.
And I'm imagining
Which describing it, by the way, as I said, I didn't know how I was going to describe it. And I would not have told you that the getting the clothes available for snow was even part of the process that I thought about, right? Like I in describing it to you, like, oh yeah, that is kind of a thing that I have to think about a lot, but it would not have come top of mind because it's just so normal. It's normal. I wake up, I go find the snow stuff. If it's, by the way, if it's wet, I throw it in the dryer. It only takes about 10 minutes. So I have ways of adapting in real time, and I know that when I get up, I have to go find all of the things. So actually, I choose to get up about an hour before I have to get the kids up, especially if I don't know where things are, to make sure that that's all ready. And then also do things like prep lunches in case the lunches haven't been prepped the day before, which we could go into detail about what that looks like. So I already know how to adapt to it. So when you ask me if it's a problem, it wouldn't strike me as a problem. But if you lay out the process, and we were trying to make a process diagram of what I just said, it's a brittle, broken process, which has plenty of opportunity for it to be improved. Absolutely ply of opportunity for it to be improved. And if this is a work process,
absolutely.
if this is a work process, we better improve it, right? Otherwise, it's completely inefficient. You have so much variability. Like it needs to be improved. But it would be hard to point out or for me to even mentally pick out without having to describe it to you. And honestly, as silly as it sounds, it's fun to describe, which we find even when we're operationally learning, when people are teaching us about their world at work, it's almost like we're all discovering at the same time. It's fun to describe what you have to manage to someone else. And in doing that, it's incredibly powerful because now we have the same mental picture of sort of the brittleness of the current state, which gives us plenty of places to make improvements.
This is a hard pivot, but I promise I'm going to bring it back.
All right, I'm ready.
Have you seen the show Alone?
Yes,
where they take 10 people and they put them in a remote location by themselves. These people can bring 10 items and they have to survive for as long as they can in the wilderness with no food given to them or anything like that. Brief synopsis. But they describe their experiences so much as solving problems. And all they have is a bunch of problems to solve and a camera to record themselves solving it or talking about it. And they get so excited to talk about the problems they've overcome. And I find it to be an exact mirror of the reality we're talking about here, but also in operational learning, which if you sit someone down with genuine curiosity to learn about something and they have experience overcoming problems and obstacles and getting stuff out on time or getting the kids to school on time, there's so much pride and excitement to talk about it. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Like you were genuinely excited to tell me about the Big Five and how you have...
I was a little bit mad that we stopped after 7 minutes, right? Because I could fill up, 45 minutes easily.
I didn't know how long I could talk about the Big Five for, but it probably would be another 10 minutes just in and of itself. And then I realized I was like, if I keep going and then it's 15 minutes of talking about 5 things in a bag, it's going to illustrate this well, but someone's going to be like, come on, Matt, you got to move on.
Move on. Let's go. Move on. Which is why we wanted to illustrate all 3 of these different ways of learning about something, because as you can see, although this third way is by far the most holistic in terms of mental picture, being able to do a process diagram on something, understanding variability, understanding brittleness, understanding, oh yeah, there's 150 different ways that this can go south quite quickly. You can get all that information, but it's so much information that 1, it's drinking through a fire hose. And 2, to get through the entire process of my morning with all of the stories of variability, it would take us a bit. That's one of the reasons why when we do learning teams, we say, okay, we're going to do 2 45-minute sessions, for example. And it's not because it's hard to get people to have conversation. Usually, it might start off a little bit slow, but then people get excited about talking about their reality. When you have 2 45-minute sessions, you've filled up 27 flip charts easily with a bunch of process information, which is fantastic, but for some people is incredibly overwhelming, because then the next thought is, well, what do we do about it all? Like, how do we how do we solve all of it? And that's the piece of the puzzle where the concept of um, being able to help in the organizational psychology sense is incredibly powerful, of sowing ownership into these discussions, of making sure that we have real collaboration in coming up with solution sets, which also requires us not to try to boil the ocean, right, in trying to solve all of these things. And so this idea of learning about complexity has to be then paired with what we do with the information, which leaps us from this complexity lens into the organizational psychology lens of, how do we create an environment of ownership? And part of it's got to be co-developed solutions and making sure that we have the same problem statements in mind. And we leap from one of these big areas of knowledge in this hop space to another, which is probably where we should start our next episode, is in the organizational psychology piece of it. But the desire to avoid learning becomes pretty high when you know how much you're going to learn. But the value of it is also incredibly high. So it's a trade-off that people have to make, depending upon how much time they have, depending upon how much improvement they're trying to make in the process, and depending upon how much appetite they have to learn reality, because it's not clean and clear. It's oftentimes incredibly messy and complex and kind of hard to wrap your head around all the moving pieces of the puzzle.
Yep. I was thinking of an analogy as you were going through this, and it's I mean, it's very easy to, you said drinking through a fire hose. It's very easy to walk near a situation, look at it, and be like, no, I don't have the appetite today to drink through this fire hose, and just kind of walk away. And it's probably better equipped if you're. Last year, I went on a running journey, and I'm not a runner. That's surprising, I'm sure, to everyone who's ever seen me. I'm not a runner. My goal was last year to do a 10K for my birthday. I don't know. Seemed like a good challenge to set out. And the idea of like just even running a mile to start was not just horrifying. It was just, I just didn't have the appetite for it. But then when you start doing it and you get used to running a mile, well, then a mile's not so bad. And then all of a sudden 2 miles becomes not so bad. And you build and you build. And it's the same idea. You're building an endurance, a skill set, and a tolerance for it. And then it becomes second nature. And you don't even realize it when you're doing it. And that's what we're trying to get to, is just get that first mile in.
Yeah. Because great leaders make great decisions with great information. And if you want a pathway to great information, it's being able to do this well without getting overwhelmed. And I think I remember some of the first, we didn't call them learning teams yet, but some of the first times that I did what we would now call operational learning, it was after I had done the index card thing that we talked about it in a few episodes. If you don't know what we're referring to, it's you hand out index cards to a whole group of folks, and you just ask them, if you had to guess, if you had to try to be predictive, where's the next serious incident going to happen, right? Just based on all your past knowledge. Don't overthink it. Just first thing that comes to mind. And then you take that information and you operationally learn in those areas. And one of the first places that I learned was in a fluorescent penetrant inspection, or FPI booth. And I just had to, like, the first thing I learned about was just how you load parts onto an overhead conveyor system. Like, I could only learn about that tiny piece of it. This process, by the way, you load the parts, you spray it down, you spray it with something else, you dry it, you put it in another place, you put it in under black light. You see, like, there's so many different pieces to this process. And I got overwhelmed with just learning about how you get the various parts onto these hooks. And that was my first mile, right? Like, okay, this is all I got. So let's just try to improve this piece of it, because I can't even imagine all the rest of the things that we have to go through, from, hey, we've loaded these parts onto these hooks, but then we have to manipulate the parts later on these hooks. Like, I just couldn't even allow myself to learn that much, because I already felt overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So that was my first mile.
Yeah, you don't go out there and just do the 10K, right? Like, don't sit down and be like, hey, everybody, let's sit down for a second. How are we going to solve world hunger? Like, that's not where we want to start. Start with something that is discrete and you can kind of pinpoint and then learn about it. And Andy, I'll ask you this as the ex-safety professional. How would we give advice on maybe something to go and try? Would it be something that's kind of like reoccurring in an audit or an observation? Like, what's a good thing to pick that is maybe small enough to go and try it out on?
If we wanted to do option 3, you mean of like
if you were going to get your first mile
try?
in, yeah,
we're going to get our first mile in. So I would pick something small, but let's figure out trigger wise what could be small. So if you pick a reoccurring audit finding, it could be something very small, it could be something enormous, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know. So I guess what I would be picturing is something that's reoccurring, but it doesn't have a lot of moving pieces to it. It's not very complex.
So something that feels like frustratingly simple to get right, that's not being done correctly?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of some real examples of things that would be an audit. So in my world, it might be something like a waste bin isn't put in the proper place. Like you always find it somewhere wrong. Or a specific disconnect is blocked a lot. Like every time you go into a certain area, a specific disconnect is blocked. Or a piece of guarding is always sort of pushed out of the way, not
like
disconnected,
the same
but pushed
piece
out of the way.
and the same equipment.
The same piece. Yeah. Same equipment. That's probably some of the places I'd try to go learn. Theoretically, right, in these examples, nothing bad has happened yet. It's a non-compliance, but we haven't had an event, so there aren't a lot of eyes on it. You can kind of choose how much you want to learn, and you have a place to start. And in starting that conversation, it can be as simple as, hey, I noticed that this waste bin is over here a lot, and I'm just curious if you could teach me how it gets here. And that's basically asking somebody to start with a snippet of a process, and then you're encouraging them to teach you more about the process. So you're process focused with your question. And to be clear, the questions aren't things like, do you know why this waste bin isn't supposed to be here? Mm-hmm. That's not the type of question we're trying to ask. And in this case, we wouldn't be asking, what's the most frustrating thing about putting this waste bin in the right spot? That would be option number 2, right? That we were talking about. If we want to learn about the process itself, it would be, hey, I've noticed this waste bin is over here a lot. Can you teach me a little bit about how it gets here?
So
that's it.
Mile 1, a good example is something that's maybe a frequent flyer, low severity,
but without a lot of moving pieces, right? It's not a highly complicated task. But most audit findings, most audit findings I can think of off the top of my head are not highly complicated.
Yep.
Not that there aren't ones that are, just a lot of them are fairly simple, seemingly simple compliance requirements, which obviously if you dive into it, you could find it's far more complex than you'd imagine. Oftentimes that's true, but at least you're starting with a tiny bit of a process and you can sort of scope how much you want to learn in that conversation.
Got it. Well, we did it. We concluded complexity.
Oh, finally got through complexity.
And now in this moment, you realize why I'm always right. And I haven't turned off the recording yet, so everyone can hear it, which is had we done 15 minutes of operational learning about your morning, this would be a 4-hour episode because then you would have had to talk through every point that you made and would be on forever. So I just want to, again, I'm right. Okay, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Well, that's it.
Yep, another one in the books. We did it.
If you want to send us any of your thoughts, actually fling us any of your thoughts, you can do so at the website www.hoppodcast.com.
That's HOPPODCAST.com.
It's still such a stupid name.
It's such a stupid name. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.